Oh, did you ever have one of those days where you just can't get motivated? But today is brew day, and I guess that's reason enough to put your pants on in the morning. I'm continuing with my plan for the year today. My plan, in case I haven't explained it in a previous video, is to make a handful, and I've picked 3 beers and just work on only those 3 and not just go chasing any recipe that catches my eye. I made a list of brewing goals in January instead of New Year's resolutions, and that was the primary one, was to work on 3 recipes and make those consistently, lock those in. The first one was a cream ale, and I've pretty much locked that in. The other one was a Dirty Bastard, Founder's Dirty Bastard clone, which failed on the first attempt miserably. The flavors just came out all muddied in that. I think there was too many ingredients in that recipe, if you ask me. So I've backed up from that specific goal, but I'm staying with Scotch ales, and I'm trying to work up a good Scotch ale. I got one in the fermenter right now. The third style was a porter, to try and build and lock in a house porter. And I've done a couple of those with good success. I like them both, but I'm going to try a third iteration of porter, and this is more of an American robust porter. It's actually a Founder's Porter clone, one of my favorite porters. And I went to the Homebrew store, Hop Craft Supply Company in Saginaw, got all of my grains, including some adjunct here, some oats. And strike water's heating, so let's get going. So over here in the dusty corner of my garage where I have my mill set up, I'm going to grind all of my my grains, my grist. If I can figure out how to turn on my mill. There we go. One of the keys of getting consistent results in your beer is having a consistent process. So I'm sticking with the underletting process. And what I'm using here is 9 pounds, 12.6 ounces of Maris Otter, 1 pound, 9 ounces of chocolate malt, 13.5 ounces of Munich malt. I've got some flaked barley that I've still got to add in, 12 ounces of that. 9 ounces of Carapils, 8.3 ounces of crystal malt 120 Lovibond, and 4.2 ounces of black patent malt. And that's the grain bill. Now we can see the water level rising in the mash tun. I've got my clip set so that 5.5 gallons right at the top of the clip. You can see the water now reaching the top of the grain bed, and I've still got another gallon or more to go. Yeah, but this is underletting. All right, I've got my 5.5 gallons of water in here. It's a pretty thick mash. I forgot to check my my mash tab on Beersmith 3 to see exactly what my water to grain ratio was. But I'll leave it right here. I'll leave it at this this thickness, because that's what the recipe says, and this is the first time I've done this recipe, so I don't want to fart around with it too much and mess things up because I couldn't leave well enough alone. Virtually no dough balls. I didn't encounter anything that resembled a dough ball. So I'm going to cover this up, hook up my hoses for recirculation, and check my temperature in a minute here. Where's my lid? I need my lid. So after all that about keeping the mash thickness the way it was written in the recipe, what do? I hooked my hoses up bass-ackwards. And instead of recirculating, I was adding more water from the hot liquor tank. Now I've got 6.5 instead of 5.5 gallons. All right, my mash is complete. I'm going to rearrange the hoses to fly sparge. A couple of things I want to do before I get that started. I want to take a gravity reading of my first runnings, my first mash, before I get the fly sparge going, just to know what it is. And I also want to recirculate some of this hot liquor tank water through the Herms coil to push out all of that wort that's in the Herms coil. I don't want to just leave that sitting there and lose it. So, 2 things to do. Alright, put a sample on my refractometer. I'll let that sit and cool for a little bit. I'll check that later. And I want to run a little bit of sparge water through the Herms coil and reclaim some of that wort. So I'm just going to pop this on the pump. So I'm just going to pop the pump on and watch when it starts coming out clear. And I've got all my good sweet wort out of the Herms coil. There we go. Okay. Don't want to dilute it too much. Now comes the balancing act of the fly sparge. And I still haven't got the hang of this auto sparge on the Blickman kettle. The balancing act is having a slow, very slow, equal flow from this kettle here and then from this kettle to here. Too fast, too fast. Always too fast. All right, let me take you for a ride here. All right, here's the mash tun, slowly letting sparge water in from the hot liquor tank. And then over to the boil kettle, which also is slowly filling. All right, for the record, the gravity of my wort before I started sparging is 19 bricks, and that calculates to a gravity of 1076, 1.076 for what it's worth. Finally starting to get a level on my sight tube in my boil kettle. Just over 3 gallons will reach the top of the coil. The boil coil. When it gets over the boil coil, I can safely turn on the heating element. Boy, that fluorescent light over top gives me good light to see, but it doesn't help with accurately capturing the color on the camera. That is just a pretty ruby brown. Okay, there we are, just at the 9-gallon volume mark. Turn all this off. I've already got my boil coil connected and my power set to 100%. What I want to do now is recapture all of this wort Aerosmith says, don't want to miss a thing. I don't want to miss a thing. I don't want to lose anything any more than I have to. And I'm just going to, it's clean water by the way. I'm just going to add this back. And make sure I get it all into the boil kettle. There we go. Alright, I think I've got this mixed well. Grab my refractometer, which is clean, right? No. Alright. Want to make sure you're taking a reading on a clean lens when you have a refractometer too. It's another tip for you from your Uncle Kevin. Alright, what I'm going to add for my first edition of hops at 60 minutes is Nugget. And this stuff smells awesome. It's 14.2% alpha acid. 1 ounce will go into the kettle to start the boil. And I'll start my timer. We are underway. All right, my pre-boil gravity is 13 bricks. 13 bricks equals 1051. My target, according to Beersmith, is 1053. So I'm pretty close. I'm pretty close. I can add a smidge of dry malt extract, or I can boil down just a little bit more to get my post-boil gravity, if need be. And my post-boil is looking for 1070. So I'll wait till I have about 15 minutes left in the boil. I'll give it another check and see where I stand at that point. All right, making a course correction here. Check my gravity and I'm low. I'm supposed to be 1070. I'm at about 1065, I believe was my reading. Maybe a little less. So I happen to have a pound of this invert sugar I made for a previous recipe. I'm going to add that. Invert is not horribly out of style for a porter. So this is just a slight course correction to hopefully get my gravity up to where I want it to be. All right, I think this is going to work. Thank you, invert sugar. Tastes good too. My refractometer reading is 18 bricks. Where's the tools? Okay, where's the refractometer? 18 bricks equals 1072. Okay, so I'm going to turn my heat off and start chilling. All right, the end of the brew day statistics. Starting with the mash, I was shooting for a mash temperature of 154 and I hit that. I was supposed to have 5.5 gallons of water in the mash, but I had 6.5, 6 3/4 due to me having the hoses hooked up bass-ackwards. So that may or may not have had something to do with my lower than expected gravity. 1070 was what I was supposed to end up with after the boil. It was 1060 something, 66, 68. So I added some invert sugar, a pound of it, boiled a little bit longer, about 5 minutes longer, and got to 1072. So that's it was a good fix. My batch volume into the fermenter, estimated at 6 gallons, and 6 gallons about on the nose is what I got. So all in all, a pretty successful brew day. I'll let this ferment for a week, minimum, 10 days, maybe 2 weeks, until the gravity levels off, the final gravity, and then I'll transfer it to a keg and put her in the kegerator if I have room. All 4 slots are full right now. That's a good feeling. I've got a Russian Imperial Stout, which will stay there until at least the holidays and probably longer. My 1880 Porter has got to be getting empty, close to empty. It's been in there for a while. My Burns Ale, Scotch Ale, just went in, and I didn't write the date down. I ought to do that. And my Cream Ale just went in today. So, I'm hoping the 1880 Porter will be emptied in about 2 to 3 weeks, and then I can put the new porter in its place. Brew day, done. Homebrew.